Welcome everyone to another read aloud, read along of one of the Jataka Tales that we have been reading together. And the story that we are going to focus on today is called In Complete Secrecy. It is the Sila Vimamsana Jataka, and we are going to experience this story together today. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into our slideshow format so that we can read along together. And as always, before we get started, we always begin with a good cleansing breath, just to bring us all into the space together where we're going to be reading aloud together and sharing this story with each other. Remembering that even if you are alone reading this story, that there are others who will also be reading this story as well, and perhaps even at the very same moment that you are reading it wherever you are. So we do this in the spirit of a collective experience, of a reading community experience, and it is also a contemplative or a meditative experience as well. So I invite you to explore reading aloud, especially the Jataka Tales, as they do incorporate the stories of the incarnations of the Buddha. So there is Dharma here as well. There's a Dharma practice to be had here as well in learning the different life lessons that the Buddha wanted to share with us. And not only the Buddha, but the community that remained after the Buddha had left, had gone. They also chose this form to share some of the lessons that they had learned from the Buddha. So the Jataka Tales themselves, some of the stories predate the Buddha, and were actually utilized as a way of sharing the message of the Buddha through the stories. So we will begin with In Complete Secrecy. The characters for this particular story, there are three characters: the Buddha, the teacher, and the student. The names of the characters are written here in red, and they also appear in red in the text. As we move along through the text, you will see these three characters. The names of these three characters also pop up in red, and that lets you know that if you chose one of these particular characters to read along at, that you have text coming that you will be reading aloud. Otherwise, if you don't read aloud as one of the three characters, you are invited to read along with me as the narrator. So however you experience the story, the reading of the story, the idea is to see through the eyes of the different characters, to experience what they experience through their perspective, and then to take that into your day-to-day life. To walk with that energy of being mindful of the experience and the perspective of other people, and of other sentient beings, and seeing how you experience then your life through that perspective. So let us continue with In Complete Secrecy and see what happens. It was while staying in Jetavana that the Buddha told this story about controlling the defilements. One night, 500 bhikkhus who had ordained together were harboring sensuous thoughts and decided to return to lay life. To protect them, the Buddha asked Venerable Ananda to summon all the bhikkhus in Jetavana. After they had gathered, the Buddha said, "Bhikkhus, in former times, a wise man, understanding that wrongdoing can never be kept secret, refrained from it." Then he told this story of the past. Long, long ago, when Brahmadatta was reigning in Varanasi, the Bodhisattva was born into a Brahmin family. When he was old enough, he was sent to study under a renowned teacher who had 500 students. This teacher had a lovely daughter who had just come of age, and the teacher wanted to find a suitable husband for her. Let me test my bright young students, he thought, and offer my daughter to the best. One day, the teacher assembled all the students and announced, "Lads, as you know, I have a grown-up daughter whom I intend to give in marriage. First, however, I must have the proper dresses and ornaments for her. I want you to steal these things for me. Anything of value will do," he continued, "but, and this is most important, it must have been stolen in complete secrecy. If anyone saw you take the thing, I will not accept it. Bring what you steal to me and tell me the details, but make sure that no one else knows you took it." The students agreed to the conditions and accepted the challenge, believing that success would win them the prize of marriage. At all hours of night and day, they stealthily sneaked around the city, furtively stealing dresses, jewels, and other treasures. In secret, they took these items one by one to the teacher, who cataloged them carefully under each student's name. When his storeroom was full, the teacher summoned all his students. He pointed to one student and said, "You alone brought me nothing." "That is true, master," the student replied. "Why is that?" the teacher asked accusingly. "Master," the student replied calmly, "you told us that we have to steal each item in complete secrecy. I believe that there can be no secrecy in wrongdoing. No act of wickedness can be perfectly hidden. The fool may think it is secret, but at the very least, the devas of the woods will have seen it done." Extremely pleased to hear these words, the teacher exclaimed, "Young man, I am a prosperous man of more than ample means. I have no need of these things for my daughter's trousseau. What I was hoping to find was a virtuous man for her to marry. This exercise was a test for all of you, and obviously you alone are worthy of her hand. As for the rest of you," he said to the other 499 students, "please retrieve from my storeroom everything you stole and return it to its proper owner." Shortly thereafter, the teacher had his daughter dressed in robes of the finest silk and gave her in marriage to the honest student. "Thus, bhikkhus," the Buddha said in conclusion, "the foolish students, because of their dishonesty, lost the prize they sought, while that wise youth, by his virtuous conduct, won the lovely young woman for his wife." Having concluded his story, the Buddha taught the Dhamma, and the 500 bhikkhus attained arhatship. Then Buddha identified the birth. At that time, Sariputta was the teacher, and I was the wise and honest youth. There we have it. The story of doing things, or trying to, in complete secrecy. To put a seal on the story, we're going to take another deep breath and then reflect a little bit on the story itself. But first, let's take that deep inhalation again, like we did at the beginning, and then release it. I'm really grateful for this story. For me, it plays on obviously different levels, but I always try to, with the Jataka Tales, I think they present themselves at different times, to different cultures and in different periods of time. The tales themselves become incarnated, just like the Buddha's life in each of the tales is an incarnation. I think each story also has that ability to be incarnated, reincarnated, to reappear at different times. And reading this story now in this time where I am in the U.S., where we have the unrest that we have, where we have demonstrations in the streets, and where we have folks who are taking things, who are making that part of their expression. It makes me think of a situation like this, um, where as things being taken, um, where at times one may think one is taking these things in secrecy, or at the very least, creating a space for doing that. Whether or not you care, or whether someone knows that you're doing it or not, is not the point, but that you're creating that space in your own mind where you think it's okay to do that. So in creating that space, you are creating that karma. You are planting those karmic seeds by participating in that decision with yourself to do that particular thing. And then knowing absolutely everyone um, at some point will be aware of the effects of that decision. You will be aware of the effects of that decision without any judgment to say whether what you decided to do was positive or negative, was good or bad. The recognition that, yep, there will be an effect. And what will that effect be? And how will I walk with that effect? So even if you're not the one that is has participated in that decision, because just like the bhikkhu who did not participate in that decision, but he he also, though, at any rate, participated in the effect of their decision, and that he ended up with the prize, right? He ended up with the daughter of his teacher, and he became the one who was able to participate in marriage with her, even though that was what they all wanted. All 500 of the students had wanted that. He, through his karma, through his decision, was able to participate in a way where the result was this very wonderful thing happening. So what I invite you to participate in and with and to walk with, until we come together again for the next Jataka Tale, is to walk with that idea of karma, to walk with that idea of decisions made today result in what tomorrow, and to see that connection through the eyes of others, to see it absolutely through the eyes of the other bhikkhus who did go out and steal, to see it through the eyes of the teacher who gave them that challenge, to see it through the eyes of the daughter, um, who then participated in the life of the person um, who came out victorious, if you will, in out of that challenge, who won the right to share a life with her. What would her thoughts have been? What would her perspective have been in watching these 500 young men do the things that they did, make the choices that they made, to win the opportunity to be her husband, to share a life with her? So there's a lot there. Even though it is a relatively short story, there's a lot of depth there, a lot of things to turn over in your mind. And although it's only three characters that we're reading, within those three characters, there were such drastically different decisions being made, especially for the young students who had no speaking lines. You didn't hear really um, what their thought process was, but you saw the result. You saw the result of decisions that they made. So I invite you to think about all that, to contemplate all that, to meditate on that, to reflect on all of that until we see each other again for the next Jataka Tale. I wish you all well. I wish you good health, strength, strength of mind, peace of mind, and harmony until we see each other again. Peace and blessings.